All right, so today's video is about how energy moves through ecosystems. Joining me today is Mr. Black, expert on energy. He's taught virtually every science course that has ever been available.
Pretty
at Warren,
much.
so he knows his stuff. He's a good
Some
science
stuff.
guy.
I try.
Yep. So anyway, now why is energy important for living things?
Well, I think the better question is, how is it not important for everything?
He's very good at not actually answering the questions.
All right, that was kind of cheesy. No, I would probably say the easiest way to look at it is just energy is important for literally everything. If you don't have energy at all, then nothing can happen. You can't do
Right.
any of the body organ systems. None of that stuff's going to work without energy.
You need energy in order to power anything that is happening in the cell.
Very
So,
true.
Yeah, so it's important that we actually investigate how energy moves through an ecosystem, because can energy be created or destroyed?
No, it can't. There's a little thing called the first law of thermodynamics that explains that. Basically, you can't create or destroy energy. It just gets turned from one type to the next.
Right. So now these are words you should be familiar with. They're organisms. They have different ways of obtaining their energy. Either you're a heterotroph, which means you get your energy from other organisms, or you're an autotroph, which means you can make your own food, and therefore what you're doing is you're transferring energy from one source and storing it in food.
Cool.
Yeah. So
Isn't it because like the word troph doesn't that just mean like food, more or less?
does it?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Sure. We'll say yes.
Yes, I'm
It
pretty
does.
sure it is.
Yeah. I don't know my Latin or whatever as much as you guys do.
That's all good.
So, what is our main energy source? Well, the sun is the main
Yay.
one. Although this isn't always the case, which we'll get to, I think, on this PowerPoint. If not, we'll definitely talk about it in class. But most ecosystems depend on the sun for energy, because energy comes to Earth in the form of light energy, and usually photosynthetic organisms are able to transfer that into food, that energy into.
Right.
Chemical
And then I'm guessing that things that don't use photosynthetic stuff, like, us, we get our energy from something that does do photosynthesis.
Exactly. So the bottom of every food chain is like a plant, right? Because the plants are able to do photosynthesis.
Yep.
Now, I just mentioned that word food chain. Now, food chains are diagrams that just demonstrate the transfer of energy. I'm pretty sure you guys have all done food chains in some point in your school career. But one little thing just that I see sometimes that I want to make sure you understand the rule of how to draw a food chain is an arrow in a food chain, actually, whatever it's pointing to, that's where the energy moves to. So let's say you have a hamburger in my hand and there's an arrow pointing to me. That means I eat the hamburger. That means energy is transferred from the hamburger to me when I eat it.
So the arrow goes from the thing being eaten to the thing that is doing the eating.
Right, because that's where the energy goes
Yep.
to.
It's all about showing the flow of energy, where it's going, the direction of energy movement.
Right, like so as you can see on this one, you got phytoplankton, which is plankton that can undergo photosynthesis. They get eaten by zooplankton, meaning animal-like plankton.
Yep.
And then they get eaten by bigger fish and so on and so on. But point being, you notice the arrows, they all point to the thing that is eating, not the thing being eaten.
True.
So anyway, that was pretty straightforward. Here's some more, I guess one of them's the same food chain, but there's another food chain.
Right, but it
Plants.
introduces the important things like primary producer and primary consumers and so forth are all very important aspects.
Right. Yeah, we're going to get into this vocabulary actually pretty soon. Right now, maybe. No, we're going to talk about food webs first.
That's all good.
That was a smooth transition. So a food web is when you take all the food chains that exist in an ecosystem and you show them all together, because not every animal eats one thing. Not every prey is only eaten by one thing. So it seems unfair to just have these food chains like this. For example, this decayed material, there are multiple decomposers in an environment. Algae are eaten by many different things. So this is more true to how an ecosystem actually works. It's not just one chain, it's a web.
So you can look at the food web
interconnected
is showing how everything is ultimately connected to each other.
Right.
The idea that, you don't just have one linear line. There's multiple things that are going on at the same time.
Right. Do you happen to know where this food web is from?
This particular one? No, I don't.
Well, it
Is
has
it
a kookaburra, so...
Oh, I'm guessing Australia?
Yep, Australia.
See?
Yep. So anyway, now you saw a bunch of vocabulary on that previous slide. We're about to get to that. So now each level on a food chain has a very vocabulary-ish name. It's called a trophic level, meaning a food level, okay?
Right.
So you can identify based on an organism's trophic level what kind of food it eats, what it usually gets eaten by, things like that. So the first trophic level at the bottom of any food chain is what we call a producer, because they produce the food that ultimately gets run through the food chain.
Right. And is that also probably like the biggest level too?
Yeah, it is because you need a lot of plants to sustain the populations above. Although we're going to look at that more mathematically in a minute.
Okay.
Here. Now, the first things that eat the producers are called the primary consumers. Primary means what?
First.
First, and consumer means you eat it, right?
Right.
So that's the second level, although it's called the primary consumer.
So those would be like your herbivores, probably.
Right. That was the question I was about to ask you.
Oh,
It's like
see?
you're reading my mind. I was going to say, what are primary consumers, you think? And because they eat producers, they're herbivores. Secondary consumers are usually carnivores, but they're not really that big. A lot of them are insectivores because a lot of the primary consumers out there are insects.
Right.
Although not in every food chain. But
or vegans.
yeah. Then they get eaten by lions. But anyway, so secondary means the next level that eats the primary consumers. Tertiary means the third level of consumers. Quaternary is the fourth level of consumers. Now, it doesn't always go that high. And
Right.
on the flip side, you could have like 10 levels to a food chain. It doesn't always go to 5. Okay? Now, a key thing to remember, though. Now, when you eat, what do you have for lunch just now?
What did I have for lunch?
Mm-hmm.
I had cheese.
You had cheese. what a,
But typically I eat like salads and stuff like that. So.
okay. So when you eat a salad, every single calorie of that energy, is that stored and then passed on? Well, you don't get eaten. So
Right.
it's not
If I
passed
were
on.
to get eaten, though.
Okay, so let me pose that differently. Let's say a lion were to come out right now. Would that lion get every calorie of energy? Or the shark? The shark will get you.
No, shark.
Let's see. He's clubbing his fist over there.
He's
Anyway,
happy.
so the shark eats you.
Yep.
Is it going to get every calorie of energy that you ate in your lunch?
Nope.
Why?
Well, the main reason for that is because you have to remember, as you're eating stuff, you're using a lot of that energy, one, to just break stuff down, but two, most of that energy is going to get lost due to heat.
Right.
And unfortunately, we have not adapted to being able to use that heat, so
Right.
it just kind of leaves.
Right. So, like, I ate, I had my, what did I have for lunch?
I don't know.
I don't know.
The
I had some turkey thing.
burritos. They were like
Yeah.
enchiladas.
Burritos.
Yeah. So, anyway,
Better than my
yeah,
lunch
that
with
gives me the
cheese.
energy to walk around the rest of the day. It gives me the energy to talk. So, as I use that energy, though, it is leaving.
Right.
Yeah. So, and since it's leaving, can't be passed on to, let's say, this shark if it eats me.
Right. And even if you were to get eaten, like, let's say, like, I ate my salad, and immediately right after I ate my salad, that shark ate me, it still would not get 100% of the energy from the salad, because as my body's breaking all the bonds to release the energy, which I'm then going to use to do everything else, most of that is immediately lost due to heat, like right away. So it's like gone.
Now, the approximate amount of energy that's actually conserved from each level is about 10%. So that means when you eat something, about 90% of what you eat will typically be out of your system within like 24 hours. I don't know if it's officially called the rule of 10, but I like to call it the rule of 10.
I've always heard it called that too, so
Yeah,
why don't
so-
we run with it?
Sure. So, once again, 90% of energy is lost at each trophic level. So, what that means, and this goes back to, you remember you were asking me, why are there more producers than
Right.
consumers? Blah, blah. Well, that's because at the producer level, all that, like, let's say you have a field of grass, okay? Even all the energy that they take from the sun, only 10% is going to be available to the next level,
Like a cow.
like a cow or whatever. So you need a lot to sustain the next level up, since only 10% is actually going to be able to be passed on, and so on. So let's say then you're like in a forest ecosystem. You have, the grass, and you have insects. Well, you notice there's way more insects than there are, say, some bird that eats the insects.
Right.
That's because 10% of that energy is lost by those insects. Therefore, you're going to have a lot less birds available to be sustained.
And just so on as you move up, you're going to have less and less as you go from first to second to third. Makes sense.
Right. And graphically, we show this in the form of what we call an energy pyramid, because you have much larger amount of energy available at the bottom, and there's much less energy available at the top. If you were to take a survey of all the energy available in an ecosystem, the top predators would make up a very, very small percentage of that. So let's do a little example.
I like examples.
Yes. So, by the way, did you know that when you write calorie, like the calories we count are actually not the calorie?
No, they aren't. You're
Yeah,
right.
you'll notice that, like in the nutrition facts, even in some other countries, they write kilocalories instead. That's because what we measure in calories is actually 1,000 calories to kilocalorie. So that's why we have a C in front of, or excuse me, a K for a calorie there. Because
I always like to look at it that we came up with a big calorie with a capital C to make us feel better about what we eat.
Yeah,
Because if you eat a candy bar that's 200 calories, that's better sounding than if you eat something that's 200,000
yeah, it makes us feel
calories.
better about ourselves. But anyway, so let's suppose a section of grass in a field contains 1,000 kilocalories of energy. how much energy is available to that cow that's going to be eating the grass?
Well, because we're talking about the fact that only 10% gets passed on, I'm going to guess only 100.
I think you're right.
Yay.
And then how about
math.
how about a human that
Eats the cow?
yeah.
10.
Very good. So hopefully this makes sense. Not too difficult.
Yeah. And if a lion
Hopefully you
ate
know
that
how to
human,
divide by
1%.
10 also. Yeah.
Take away a 0.
Yep. So I think that is actually it. Mr. Black, thank you for helping.
You are more than welcome.
Thanks. See
Maybe
you
I'll be
later.
here again. Bye.
Bye.